Hey guys, I'm Kate Bihm. I'm a family law attorney in Montgomery County, Texas, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the division of property in a divorce. So, property division under Texas law is designed to be a just and right division of your marital assets and your marital debts. Now, this is something I could talk about for probably 8 hours straight. So, in this video, what I want to do is kind of give you an understanding of a general sense of how property division works and guideposts for understanding overall what you can expect from that process. All right. So in my consultations with clients, I have questions all the time where people are like, I want to know what's going to happen with my house, or I want to know that I'm going to be able to keep all of my teacher retirement, or who's going to make my car payment after the divorce is final. And the reality is, in an initial consultation, I don't have enough information to answer any of those questions. But what I can do is I can talk generally about the idea of the property division in a divorce and how it works in a really global general sense. So let's get into it. All right. So when we talk about property division in a divorce, really what we're talking about is the division of the net value of your marital estate. What does that mean? Well, the net value of the marital estate is where the court takes the total value of all of your assets and subtracts the total value of all of your debts. And the number that we get there is the net value of your marital estate. And that's really the numbers that the court is working with. So for example, and I'm going to use real big numbers, that's why I became a lawyer instead of an accountant or doctor, because I'm not super hotsy-totsy at math. So let's say that you have $1 million worth of assets, and then when you subtract your mortgage and all of the notes on your cars and all of your credit card debts, the net value is $500,000. And a just and right division, just for pretend, is 50-50 to each spouse. Well, the court is going to be looking at giving $250,000 of value to husband and $250,000 worth of value to wife. Now, the court is not going to take a sledgehammer and a chainsaw and break every single asset that you have in half. Instead, what the judge is going to be looking at doing is working with that net value, finding a way to split everything up. So for example, if you have $500,000 worth of value in retirement accounts, $100,000 of it to wife and $400,000 of it belong to the husband's retirement account, then it may be that wife gets to keep all of her retirement account and husband's retirement account, a portion of that value shifts over to wife to help give her the appropriate part of the net value. Or it may be that because the house has very little equity in it, that one partner gets the house and the mortgage that's associated with the house, and the value in the equity in the house goes on that partner's column for how much of the net value that they are going to get. When you're hiring a family lawyer, one of the things that's really important that you do is hire a family lawyer that understands how personal finances work. Look, we're not financial advisors. We're not here to tell you how to invest your money. We are not CPAs, at least most of us aren't CPAs. I'm certainly not. I'm not here to tell you how you should deal with your taxes. But what I am here to do is to give you an understanding of your personal finances, what assets might be more valuable to you in today's dollars, what assets might be more valuable to you in future dollars, like a retirement account. And also, and this is a really important part of the services that we provide, what assets you can't even afford to keep. I can't tell you how many times I've been helping a client in a divorce, often a stay-at-home spouse or wife, who really wants to keep their house in the divorce. It's their children's home, it's where they feel secure and safe, and they have a plan in place where they can afford to make the house payment until they get a job. But one of the things that they may not understand is that there are carrying costs that go along with owning a home, like insurance and taxes and maintenance, that they don't really have a solid plan in place in order to be able to maintain their house long term. And so one of the things that we try to do for our clients as family lawyers is to help them put a plan in place that helps them not just get as much as they can out of the divorce, but also to preserve the value of those things after the divorce so that they can be helpful to them in the future. If you don't have a job, paying a $1,500 a month payment on your Escalade every month is not really a viable plan, even though you really, really love that car. The same thing goes for getting all of the value in your husband's retirement account. If you're not at retirement age, you may have to pay taxes and penalties and interest in order to withdraw that value so that you can live on it until you get a job and get back on your feet. So as a family lawyer, part of my job is to help my clients not just plan for the short term of getting the absolute most that they can out of their marital estate, but also to make sure that they get it in such a way that is very useful to them in the short term and in the long term. And that's what we want to make sure that we do for our clients, is to provide them with that insight. Another important thing to understand about the division of property in your case is that a 50-50 split is not always a just and right division of the marital estate. There are more than a dozen ways that a court can justify giving a spouse an unequal distribution of the marital assets and the marital debts. I'm not going to go through them all in this video here, but having an attorney who's well-versed in these issues is an important part of maximizing your outcome in the divorce. And when it comes to whether you should pursue an unequal division of the marital assets and the marital debts, one of the most important things you have to consider is that net value of your marital estate. And here's why it's important. So let's say that you are sitting in your final mediation, and again, we're going to come back to this net value of $500,000. You come to the realization that your spouse is not going to settle unless they get a 50-50 division. So it's a 50-50 division or bust, right? And the net value of your marital estate is $500,000. Well, if it's going to cost you $25,000 to pursue a 55-45% split of the marital estate, that means it's going to cost you the exact same amount in attorney's fees that it is for you to go and have your absolute best day in court and get 55% of the marital estate. Because 1% of your marital estate is $5,000. So you can pay it to your lawyer, sure, but here's what you've got to think about, and this is where the math gets tricky. So if it's going to cost you $25,000 to go to trial to try to get more than 50%, it's probably going to cost your spouse the same. So that means that now the net value of your marital estate, instead of being $500,000, is $450,000. You know who wins there? The lawyers. And I'm not afraid to say it. And look, I have some clients that the net value of their marital estate is so big that spending $40,000, $50,000, even $100,000 to go to trial is actually a good investment, because they just have so much money that needs to be split that it's a good idea for them to spend that money to pursue better. But the vast majority of people in family court, they wind up reducing the value of their marital estate such that even if they get everything they ask for in court, it's less than what they would have gotten if they had settled. So when you're hiring an attorney, you really need to consider, how practical is the attorney that I'm going to hire? Are they thinking about how much money they can make off of me if they advise me to go to trial? Or are they looking at a real cost-benefit analysis for the client about what is the cost to go to trial versus what is the cost to settle, even if it's not an ideal settlement? And these are the things that often happen when people are the most tired in the divorce, when they're at the bitter end and they really just want to be done. But they also are terrified about how they're going to survive without a dual income household, how they are going to live if they're not living in the house where they currently live now, how they're going to meet all of their daily needs without their spouse's income. And so when they're making that decision, that, let's say 2, 5, even 10% of the net value of the marital estate seems like a lifeline to cling to for their future. But you have to consider the cost of the litigation as well, because that is going to have a material effect on the net value of your marital estate unless you're very wealthy. And there's also a real human cost to litigation. It doesn't just take attorney's fees. It takes time off of work. It takes stress. It takes a toll on your body. It's difficult for your children. There are all these things that are a part of litigation that have nothing to do with the attorney's fees that, in my mind, your attorney needs to be talking to you about to make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze, to use one of my favorite expressions. And so when you're hiring an attorney and you're looking for someone that's going to give you that practical, relevant advice, you need to consider that when you're interviewing lawyers on who is going to represent you in your divorce. The other thing that I want to talk to you about when it comes to the property division in your divorce and the net value of your marital estate is when people really are afraid that they don't have a clear understanding of what they have and what they owe. I've represented clients where once we got into their divorce, they realized that their spouse had taken on an enormous amount of debt or had actually taken on debt in their name, and that even though they had been living really high on the hog, they just didn't have that net value that they thought that they had, and that can be terrifying. And it can feel like a real betrayal. I have also had clients who found out during their divorce that they were a lot wealthier than they realized. I'm thinking about this one mediation that I was in where my client looked at me and was like, I've been coloring my hair with box dye for the last 5 years, and we have millions of dollars in the bank. This has to be a joke. And it happens both ways, y'all. I also have clients occasionally who come in, who they have a spouse that runs a small business, and they think that because the business doesn't make that much money, it doesn't have a lot of value. And so they're really hesitant to spend a lot of money to figure out how much that business is worth. We have valued businesses where the parties were living a normal life, not wealthy, but comfortable. And they thought, well, I mean, we don't make that much money, so why would I spend money to get the business valued? Only to find out that the business was worth millions of dollars that the court needed to consider as part of their divorce. I've also had cases where you had a partner who was a business owner, but the vast majority of the value in their business was their personal goodwill, which means the business owner's reputation in the community and what the business owner brought to the business. I always use my own law firm as an example. If my husband wanted to divorce me and came to me and said, I want half of the value in your law firm in this divorce, I would look at him and say, great, you can have all of it. I quit. And then move down and open the Bihm Firm PLLC 2 down the street and take all of my clients with me. And that means the business isn't worth that much money, y'all. So these are the types of things that your lawyer needs to understand and the types of issues that your lawyer needs to be able to spot as part of their advice to you in, one, what level of services and what amount of time and effort is valuable to spend in determining what is the net value of your marital estate, and two, where to look to find this information and how to get it. So I realize this has been sort of a long and winding discussion of property division and divorces, but property divisions and divorces can be really long and winding. They can have a lot of different factors that go into them. And if you hire an attorney who's not experienced in these issues, who doesn't have a clear understanding of personal finance and what they should be looking for, or perhaps even worse, who really doesn't want to spend the time and effort with you to understand how the finances in your own marriage have worked so that they can know what issues to be looking for and where to head with the litigation, you could find yourself in a really difficult position where you don't get your fair share of what value you have built up in your marriage, and also where your spouse may be able to kind of get away with murder in the property division. And I think that's what a lot of people are afraid of, right? They're afraid that somehow they will be taken advantage of because they have a particularly wily, underhanded spouse, or because they're afraid that someone has been hiding money or hiding debt. And so it's really critical that you hire an attorney that's willing to spend the time and effort to ferret out that information and to find it, but also that you hire an attorney that doesn't go, chasing a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow when there's really no evidence to support the fact that that pot of gold even exists. And there needs to be a happy medium somewhere. And we hope that's what we provide for our clients is, again, doing that cost benefits analysis to say, look, we can pursue this outcome for you. We can pursue finding this evidence. We can go to the ends of the earth to find every single last dime that might exist to be split. But there is cost associated with that, not just in legal fees, but again, in the real human cost of litigation. And we want to help our clients find that happy medium. And that's something I think your lawyer should be helping you with too. Another topic that's really important in the concept of the net value of the marital estate is separate property versus community property. Texas is a community property state. I think everybody who's ever talked about or considered getting divorced in Texas understands that. But understanding what is separate property and what is community property is an important part of the division of the property. So the law presumes in Texas that all of the property that you own at the time that you get divorced is community property. That means that it's owned equally by both husband and wife. Separate property is property that you owned prior to your marriage or that you inherited or received as a gift during your marriage. So if your wife gave it to you for Christmas under the Christmas tree, it's your separate property. Okay? But if when you get divorced, you want to prove that something is your separate property, you have to prove by clear and convincing evidence, which is a really high legal burden. It's the legal burden that's directly underneath beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the burden we use to convict people of murder. Okay? So if you want to prove that something is your separate property, you have to prove by clear and convincing evidence that either you owned it prior to marriage, that you received it as a gift during the marriage, or that you inherited it during the marriage. And sometimes that can be difficult to do. Sometimes it's really easy to do. You'd be surprised in a lot of cases, people agree on what's separate property and community property when it comes to the really big stuff. Now, it's when separate property and community property have been commingled that things get a little bit more difficult. And that's when it becomes really important that you retain the services of an attorney who's not just familiar with these concepts, but understands the legal standards that apply to how that evidence can be separated, not like separate property, but you know what I mean, separated, how you can prove in court using the law what is community and what's separate property. So remember, the court can always consider the value of someone's separate property versus the value of all of the community property in making a division of the community property as well. That's a general global overview of the net value of the marital estate and how property can be divided in divorces. But when you are talking to your lawyer or you are seeking the services of an attorney, what I really want you to do is to use this video and kind of this general understanding of this process to help you formulate good questions about what you should be asking potential counsel and what you might be asking your own lawyer, to set reasonable expectations for yourself going through litigation. And remember, this is not legal advice for you. This is public information for people who are seeking legal services to give them a better general understanding of this topic, and hopefully you can find it useful. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment, share, and follow us on our platforms because there's more good stuff to come, I promise. Click the link in bio if you're in our service area and think you might want to have a consultation with us, and good luck in court.